Okay, we're back on live streaming. It looks to me as if we are. Okay,
Yep.
welcome back, everybody, and thank you for your patience on this one. Just to recap, I'm going to ask Ali Slade from Natural England to give a Natural England perspective on where we find ourselves in terms of trying to make a decision. Ali, I hope you can hear me.
I can, yes. Yes, I apologise for that. I seem to have lost my internet connection at the moment. But yes, thank you for letting me have an opportunity to speak briefly. Natural England supported the report and all the recommendations for the following reasons. The mitigation strategy, the South East Devon mitigation strategy, is essential for allowing further residential development to pass the tests under the habitat regulations. And also, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry, yes. I mean, it's essential, but also, I mean, it's essential in terms of those tests under the habitat regulations that mitigation is secured and in perpetuity. So there needs to be certainty that it's going to be delivered in the long term. And that in this particular case, delivery of the mitigation strategy does need a team of people to actually implement it. We've been very pleased with the progress being made by the team that we have working on the strategy, and it would be a big risk to the strategy to lose any of those staff through sort of lack of certainty of continuing the roles. And I mean, the proposal at the moment to increase a very small increase in developer contributions per dwelling seems like a very good value for money from our perspective. So we would encourage the council to the committee to approve the recommendations, and there is a risk if they're not approved that the strategy could unravel, with the implication in the future that the local authorities, as competent authorities under the habitat regulations, would not be able to carry out the appropriate assessments that they need to do for the recreational residential developments.
Thank you, Ali.
So that's probably all I can add to that. But if you've got particular questions on Natural England's position on this, then let me know.
Thank you, Ali, and I appreciate it's difficult when you're now phoning in. Okay, I know that the officers have done some work. Anita, did you have a proposed revised set of recommendation for us?
I do, Chair. Sorry, I find myself on the wrong report at this point, helpfully. So, following discussion with yourself, Chair, and the officers who brought the report forward, and recognising the significance of the, as we've heard, the need for staffing and the need for continuous staffing, what's been suggested is an amendment to recommendation 1 that adds a review point, which would be a review in April 2022 alongside the business plan. So the recommendation would read: approves an increase in non-infrastructure developer contributions to secure ongoing staff requirements as previously approved in July 2020 and updated in section 5 of this report, with a review to take place in April 2022 alongside the business plan. And then effectively the same amendment to recommendation 2. So instead of reading for a period of 5 years, it would read to be reviewed in April 2022 alongside the business plan. The officers' logic behind these is that it gives some stability it allows there to be a decision about, oh, sorry, my background is appeared. The decision about how, what the contributions look like, how the councils can have an opportunity to consider how they wish to fund the committee if that becomes an issue. What we also discussed is whether there is some merit in the council. There's reluctance to pass the matter back to the councils at this point because of the time that would take, but whether perhaps, I know we have the leader and clearly there are post-guest discussions going on, whether that might be something we could ask the leaders of the council to discuss.
Thank you. Anita, can I just check, when you read that amended recommendation 1, you said as previously approved, and I think it's July 2019. I think you said July 2020.
Sorry, July, yes,
it was
July
2019,
2019, yes.
Which was when the
yes,
when the decision was made in principle that we're now coming back to relook at.
Yes, absolutely. Apologies if I
no, that's fine. That's fine. I just want to be clear in my own mind as well.
So
sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, so they both stay exactly as they are, but in terms of time period, to say to be reviewed in April 2022 alongside.
Okay. Councillor Wrigley, how does that sit with you?
Well, it doesn't answer the immediate questions, and the immediate questions are that what we have on the table in front of us doesn't even reflect today's position, let alone the position in a couple of months' time, and it's putting off a review until 2022. I personally don't see the issue in delaying this report until the next meeting to see if there is more clarity in where we are in terms of planning and the rest of it. I would, however, be happy to accept this in the light of reviews of the mitigation strategy and the way this is going forward in a post-GESP scenario. Now, I know this is supposed to be on the plans anyway. There was supposed to be a review of the strategy and of the staffing and what was required of this. I have no problem with putting the cost of mitigation onto the developers. I just still don't see the urgency for it. As I've said, this is not going to have any significant impact over the next 3 or 6 months in reality. This has no impact on planning applications that have already been granted and not yet built. It's all set up already. This only has impact on new planning applications to be granted in the future. And when those houses are going to be built is when this money will come in. So this is not an immediate and urgent issue. It is a long-term planning issue. And what I am continuously being bounced into is decisions that are being brought to this body without the consideration of how this works in the long-term planning scenario. The planning world is in a mess right now because of what the government is doing, and we don't know what it'll look like in 6 months' time. If we could have in 6 months' time a review of this, of the structure, of the mitigation strategies, of what we need to make this work properly over the next 25 in perpetuity years, then I'd be very happy.
Chair,
Okay.
Young has his hand up.
Thank you.
Sorry to interrupt and speak more. Can I just remind the committee that the role of the committee is to carry out the terms of reference that have been put in place by the 3 councils. Anything greater than that in terms of post-GESP and the purpose of the committee and anything greater is for those individual councils to consider. Your role is more limited in carrying out what has been determined.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Young, can I get a view from you?
Yeah, bearing in mind that this decision was made in July 2019, we're going back on a decision that was made then. At that time, GESP was a vision. It hadn't come out of its thought processes. And as far as I can see, discussing this situation with GESP, it guess has got nothing to do with this. Referring it to the planning issues and the mess that government are in, I can't see the connection to that. We knew in 2019 we needed this this funding, and I can't see any reason why we should be changing from that position at this moment in time. But I would agree that we, in view of coming out of the emergency and going into next year, a review in 2022 would be very appropriate. So I would support that amendment and support all three recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Young. Yeah, I was going to say something similar to that. I mean, clearly we are in a post-GESP scenario. I mean, that is a given. We're also still in the middle of a COVID pandemic. Both of those things are going to affect what happens going forward. But as Councillor Young has said, we see, we're being asked now to put into place something that was agreed in principle over 12 months ago. And regardless of what happens post-GESP and post-COVID, seems to me, and reading this report, that requirement is still there. Two of the council's representatives are in agreement on this. I'm attempting to get to a point where we can come to an agreement with all three of us for the purposes of today's meeting. So to come back to you, Councillor Wrigley, are the revised recommendations something that you are prepared to agree to? If you are, then I think we have a way forward. And as a natural order of things, the new, as I say, post-GESP, post-COVID scenarios will have to be looked at. I'm reluctant to start kind of putting in more reviews, because while our staff are actually busy kind of reviewing, they're not actually doing what we've taken them on to do. But clearly, if this isn't acceptable to you, then we are going to have to come up with another way of dealing with it, because to me, it's clear that this funding decision is required at today's meeting in some shape or form. Over to you.
So it's clear to me that funding decision is required, but actually I don't think we're asking for enough here. I don't think that 1 day a week for social media is actually going to make enough of a difference. I don't think we're going to have enough people to do the job that we need to be doing here. I don't think this is actually good enough. That's my issue with this. So
you're proposing to further revise, make further revisions? I mean, if you've got proposals, let us know.
I started talking about my proposal and I was slapped down because it's outside of our remit to do that, but we can make recommendations back to our councils upon that. So it is within our remit to make that statement. Now there is acknowledged changes in the planning system. There are changes to the numbers. These numbers aren't right as they stand, and this is a moving target. I can see I'm fighting an uphill struggle here to try to persuade anybody else, but this is not the right time to be doing this. We need to be more thoughtful about what we're doing here, and we need frankly a stronger mitigation strategy and process than we currently have. I have been fighting of my entire time on this council, on this body, for having more measurement, more feedback, more actual indication of success of what we're doing, and getting away from this is the strategy that was set up 5 years ago and this is what we are following. We have to adapt and change as the situation adapts and change. If we don't, we will fail. And this is not showing adaptation and change. That has to be in the process that we follow. I'm in two minds. I mean, I'm partly sort of thinking about accepting the 22 review because it gets us past this point. But I want a process of fundamental change in the way we deliver this mitigation strategy. So it learns from what's happening, it responds. There is no response whatsoever in any of the documentation we've seen today about the pandemic. That is fundamentally, as we've heard from the comments of councillors, going to change people's behaviour and patterns of behaviour. If we don't change and respond, we will fail to preserve the areas that we're trying to preserve. We might continue to actually follow the strategy, but it's out of date, it's gone, it's too late. We have to learn to adapt. I worry that I have little option in this group to actually make any change whatsoever. If we do not accept, we are not given the reports from officers before they come to committee. By the time they come to committee, they're already decided by the officer working group. We have no visibility of anything that is coming up before it has already been decided. Then we are given an agenda where we simply are only allowed to rubber stamp what is put in front of us. That is not good enough. There are few opportunities I have to actually try to make a change, and this is one of them. If I can have some commitment to making change as to how we work and change as to how we are delivering the strategy so it can be more effective, I am passionate about saving the ex-estuary. What we're doing now is following an out-of-date strategy that is not, it's not taking account of the sand increase from the storms and from what the Environment Agency did. It's not taking into account the pandemic. It's not taking into account any changes in behavior. It's not adapting as we go forward. If I can have that commitment that we will start adapting to change and delivering something better, then I will happily support the amended proposal.
Okay, thank you for that. May I make a suggestion to both you and Councillor Young? It looks as if we can potentially move forward today on the basis of the terms of reference we have for this meeting. But what I would suggest, and I hope that it does meet with approval, is that outside of this meeting, that the three of us might meet potentially with our respective leaders and relevant other portfolio holders, maybe the planning portfolio holders, and perhaps sit round and have an informal meeting between us before we kind of move on to a further meeting. Would that help you, Councillor Wrigley, in terms of addressing the concerns and issues that you have?
That'd be a great first step. Yes, thank you.
Okay, well, I will liaise with my team, as it were, and possibly I might ask one of the officers in East Devon, if once we've identified who the people who need to be at that meeting are, then we can sit down and do that. I mean, I saw a thumbs up from Councillor Young. So if you are also content, and then we will do that as soon as practically possible. And I've no idea how soon practically possible is, but we can move that forward. Okay, are you content with that?
With your commitment, Councillor Sun, absolutely, yes.
Okay, thank you. So in terms of the revised recommendations that Anita put forward, are the three of us happy to approve those? Do you? Yes, we are. Brilliant. Okay, so we don't need to go through that. Thank you. So we now have agenda item 10, which is accounting for strategic suitable SANGs. And I think, Estelle, you are taking us through this report, please.
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me clearly?
Yep.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I'd like to talk through just briefly sections 1 to 3 of the report by way of an update, and then I'll hand over to Neil Harris to cover off sections 4 and 5 on the partnership funding arrangement. which will include some of the Part B elements. So just to cover the recommendations here, it's proposed that the Executive Committee notes the continued progress made on the delivery of the suitable alternative natural green space at Southwest Exeter, notes the recent completion of the funding agreement between Homes England and Devon County Council, which has legally secured the Housing Infrastructure Fund short-term HIF award, and that includes funding for the Southwest Exeter Sangs. And finally, approves the specific funding arrangements detailed in the report to cover off the Sangs provision, so that the maintenance arrangements for Dawlish and Southwest Exeter can be legally set in place, including the contribution sets for each partner authority. So just a quick summary I'll cover, and then I'll just pick out just a few quick bullet points from section 2 and 3. So in summary, since the last HREC paper, which provided an update in April 2019, significant progress has continued at the Southwest Exeter Sangs on delivery there. 2 land transfers have taken place and another is imminent. That covers a total of 20 hectares of the site. And we're on track for delivery to open to the public by the end of the financial year. And a further 18 hectares will follow on as part of the overall delivery of the site. So that's all detailed in table 1 as a breakdown. Another summary point is that the delivery strategy for the Southwest Exeter Sangs was updated prior to procuring for its establishment. That's being led by the Teambridge Green Spaces team, following the same effective approach as at the Dawlish Sangs. This allows for a high quality delivery and it's maximising the potential of the site. And finally, in summary, as agreed with HREC in April 2019, heads of terms have been agreed with Land Trust for the long lease and funding agreement for Dawlish and Southwest Exeter sites to secure the effective management in perpetuity. And the Housing Infrastructure Fund award has an agreed funding agreement between Devon County Council and Homes England. So just picking out a few key points quickly from section 2, the South East Devon Habitat Regulations Partnership Mitigation Strategy includes the provision of the strategic SANGs as part of the vital delivery to ensure its effectiveness. The Dawlish Countryside Park Sangs opened to the public in autumn 2017. It's been very well received by the existing and new local residents, as well as many visiting from the wider area. We've got visitor counter data that shows an average visitor number of 500 people daily, and the site receives much positive feedback from visitors. The Dawlish Sangs has won a Royal Town and Planning Institute award for the quality of planning and successful delivery, recognising the widespread and long-term benefits that have been achieved. This included the recognition of the strong partnership working during the design and delivery process, and also recognised the strength of the Habitat Regulations Partnership. The Dawlish site's been up and running for 3 years now and has been maintained to date using early years Section 106 funding specifically for that purpose. So it's now time to set in place the arrangements for its long-term future. And just to highlight, good delivery process has continued at the Southwest Exeter Sangs, the key point of which being that it's on track with the projected delivery time frame. And just picking up 2 key points quickly from section 3, and then I'll hand over to Neil, just to say that this report provides relevant information around the ongoing maintenance and management arrangements in this section 3. The key points here are the requirement for securing good quality long-term maintenance of the SANGS sites, and the progress that's been made to reach agreement on heads of terms with the Land Trust for the ongoing maintenance approach. And that was following the update report to HREC in April 2019 and their joint support on that approach. The report highlights the in-depth due diligence that's taken place and the measures that will be set in place within the funding agreement and long lease documentation with Land Trust, as supported by the HREC in April 2019, to enable the good quality and true in perpetuity long-term maintenance of the Dawlish and South Sector sites, and supporting the good quality delivery and providing long-term benefits for visitors, residents, and also for the environment in the partnership area, as is reasonably expected by Natural England. So I'd like to hand over to Neil just to cover off briefly sections 4 and 5, but Neil can confirm whether there are Part B elements to be covered off within that.
Thank you. Neil, over to you.
Thanks, Estelle. And yes, just to kind of recommend really to the committee that to note the team at Teambridge and their kind of commitment and expertise is really paid off in terms of bringing forward quality SANGS. So that's really something to note and celebrate. In relation to the report, to refresh the committee's understanding in terms of a wider context on this, it's worth a quick recap, I think. The mitigation strategy puts forward a number of locations around the region where provision of SANGS could act strategically to cover the cumulative and cross-boundary impacts of recreational pressure. These strategic sites are intended to be of a sufficient scale, location and quality to act as mitigation for accumulations of development across the region, rather than undertaking a more fragmented, smaller and less coherent development by development approach. Dawlish and Southwest Exeter SANGS emerged early on in the development of the strategy, and in the interest of securing delivery, the approach was taken that the partner authorities would take a financial contribution from the developers and to use this to fund the delivery and maintenance of the sites. Through evolution of the approach, learning partly from other mitigation partnerships, notably the Thames Basin, where they're in the region of 40 to 50 SANGS, this approach has now largely changed to one where developers are required to provide and maintain the SANGS, such as at the emerging expansion areas at Cranbrook. With the Housing Infrastructure Fund funding now secured, we are in a position to be able to recommend to the committee the final funding arrangements for SANGS in Teambridge as delivered by the partnership. And just a final note to the committee that there is an additional contribution reserved for SANGS in East Devon, which it is presumed would be split according to the same principles. Recommendations for which will be reported separately to the committee as and when the SANGS are in development. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Estelle. Thank you, Neil. Just as a reminder, colleagues, that if we wish to actually discuss in detail the finances that are in the Appendix 1, we will need to go into Part 2. So I'd welcome comments with that proviso. I'm happy to go into Part 2 if that's your wish. Councillor Wrigley.
Yeah, fully agree with this one. Propose we do it as recommended.
Thank you. Councillor Young, did you have a comment to make?
Yes, it all seems to be good news. Moving forward with these two SANGS areas. Unfortunate with all the roadworks around the motel at the moment and all the mud on the road, but that's something that we've got to put up with, I suppose. But I'm certainly looking forward to when we can get the SANGS area in Cranbrook up and running. So that's no, it's all good news, isn't it? Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, yes. I think this is positive, and really again to echo the credit to Teambridge for the work that they've done on the Dawlish Country Park. I mean, I haven't been for a while, but you know, last time I went, it's great, and if everything is as good as that, then yeah, we will have made a significant and very positive contribution. So we've got 3 recommendations in front of us. Are we happy to agree those, colleagues? Yes, seeing nods. Yes, yes, yes. Brilliant. Okay, so that is agreed then. Have not had need to go into part 2. So I think that's probably it, isn't it? Thank you very much for your attendance this afternoon. Thank you very much for your patience with the technological challenges and the adjournments and so on. Yes, I will. I'll be in liaison about setting up those additional meetings. Okay.
Thank you, Chair.
Yes, thank you. Thank you to all the officers. Can't see all of you, but thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks all.
Thank you.